Now, let us get into mental health. Let's talk about this. Today, we're looking at it from a very different perspective. The first time ever in my life that I, ever felt like, okay, yes, this is dealt with it was back when I was in school. And, a very friendly, he was everyone's friend, he was everyone's guy. He was somebody that, would make plans together, not just me. He was my friend. He was more than a friend to some other people. He was somebody else's brother, somebody else's son. In boarding house, then his mom would come with so much food and he would, kind of teach you self-defense. Interestingly, with a dagger. That was not right. But thinking about him now, all I can do is smile. But at the time, it was one of the most difficult things to have to deal with, in terms of losing this person, especially at the young age he was at and, the way he passed. So mental health comes in different forms. Oftentimes we talk about depression. Other days we'll talk about grief, which, if we're being very honest, a lot of people are dealing with right now. I know a number of people that are currently dealing with it. And let's now talk about, even in the popular space, when Jazzy just lost his mom, we spoke about, list goes on. So whatever type of loss, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. But to be honest, by understanding the stages, types of grief, you can find healthier ways to cope. So on Mental Health Monday today, we would be having a conversation on grief. We recently, like I said, lost some of our favorite celebs. And even today, there are so many different individuals just trying to cope with this in one way or the other. But how do we really deal with it? Is it something that starts and stops and then, you move on? Well, just to understand and navigate our way through this conversation on grief on Arise 360 for a conversation on grief, on how to deal with it, I have, she said I should simply describe her as the person that's just living and coping with grief. My very good friend, Akanke Tofumi, is with me, and rapid transformational therapist and hypnotherapist as well, Adeola Kingsley James. I'm so happy to have you both on the show with me today. This is such an important conversation. Adeola, you've done this with me before. Tofumi, thank you, for joining me on the show, as I said. So let's begin with this because we got to get in as much as we can within the time that we have. I'm going to begin with you, Adeola. Walk us through what is grief and what is not grief.
Thank you, Kachi, for having me on the show, and our guest as well. So what is grief? I think grief is the feeling of losing something or someone. So it's a natural response that comes when we lose something or we lose someone, and something could be a job, money, your phone, a relationship, divorce, someone could be somebody dying, either your spouse or your parents or your pet, depends on if you're an animal lover. So I think grief generally is just a natural response to losing something or someone.
All right, at this point, I would want to bring Tofumi into this conversation. Tofumi is a strong woman. I would like to start by describing you as that, because I've seen you, and Angela, I want you to pay attention to the things she's going to say, because even for me, I think this is the first time I'm actually going to have this conversation with her, and we've been friends for the longest time. So I fall into the category of people that I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I'm scared of saying the wrong thing and sounding like everybody else. I'm scared of not saying the right thing and sounding like I don't care. So, there's also the category of people like myself who just don't know how to help. So before we talk about how to help people like myself, Tofumi, you have been grieving. Are you still in that process? And tell us what exactly that process is about and how you got into this in the first place.
Okay. First of all, I don't think you ever stop grieving. I don't think you ever get through the process. I think it just gets better with time. I think you just find a way around it. There's never an easier process to it. So I think I'm gonna answer that question, and then wow. How did I get here? Well, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of thinking. But yeah, grief is just grief. There's really never anything to it.
Okay, so with regards to your own stage, your own grief, I know you, it had to do with your sister. That was more recent. Tell me about that.
Okay, so losing my sister, I lost her in 2019, 6th of August to be precise. That's my mom. um, I lost her 10 years after I lost my mom, and it was a very tough one for me because I had to learn to live without her. I had to learn how to process emotions without having someone to double check with. And the days that come and it's hard on me, the days that I'm happy with the memory of her, and there are days that I'm sad that she's not here. And in the past 3 years, it's not been the easiest of journeys, I must say, because there are days that I sink into it and there are days that I come out of it. There are days that I'm excited for tomorrow, and there are days that I don't want tomorrow to come and I don't want today to end. And with time, all I keep telling myself is, what will Shego do? What will she tell me to do? What will she say when you find yourself in this space? And most of the time, when I get to that point, the first thing I hear her go is JCT, because that's what she used to call me. And then once I hear that, I'm like, okay, this girl is in my head. What would she tell me to do? And I'm like, okay, JCT. And then she just goes, biggest baby in town. And I just laugh and I'm like, okay, all right. And because that voice is there, I find the strength somehow. And there's some days, it's not just the voice I want to hear. I want a hug. There's some days I just want to sit down and talk to her. So it's been a journey.
I mean, I can only imagine, literally. So, Adeola, I want to bring you in now, based off of the things she said, and in for somebody who wants to hug her without just because you're not, I'm not her, and I'm just being honest. How can you? And I'm also going to have you, Tofumi, respond to that as well, but I would like to take it from Adeola first.
Well, you can hug her. I'm not sure that there's anything wrong. Unfortunately, I didn't really hear her. Her audio went off on my side. So I didn't really hear her situation and how she's going through it, but it doesn't matter. I can just say this, look, there's no need to pussyfoot around people who are feeling pain. I think sometimes you can just ask them, how do you want me to be there for you? It's as simple as that. Do you want a hug? I remember when I lost my sister, I didn't want anybody to call me to say it is well, because it wasn't well. If it was well, people won't be calling me left, right, and center. I mean, I've come to love that sentence now, but I didn't like it then. I didn't want to. I would rather you just call me and breathe on the phone, and we're going to grieve differently. Some people may get over it in no time or go through the stages of grief. Some people don't. So if you go to see somebody who's lost someone, ask them, how do you want me to be there for you? And they'll tell you. They may just say, keep quiet and sit down, or give me a hug, or don't come and see me again. And we must respect it.
That's very important. Tiffany, what about you? Did you have that experience where there were people that let me not just say there were people, there were things people would tell you that you're like, can you just, for lack of a better word, just shut up?
Okay, so when she passed, all I wanted to do was talk about her. That was all I wanted to do. I just wanted to tell everyone how she was the happiest soul in the room. I wanted to tell everyone how she used to hype me. I wanted to tell everyone how she was my prayer partner. I wanted to tell everyone how she thinks I'm the smartest head in the house, but I think she's the smartest head in the house. I just wanted to talk about her. That was all I wanted to do. And a lot of times people will tell me, oh, when you talk about her, it doesn't make it easier. Actually, all I wanted to do was talk. That was all I wanted to do.
It's interesting you'd say that, because some would say, Well, this one that's, you're even smiling. Are you even sure that you really cared for this person? I've heard that before. I've heard someone say, ha, listen, this person is so looking good. You even have the time to dress up. You know, are you sure this person cared? So there's always, Tofubi, did you experience that guilt of, like, you know, am
Even
I,
now,
yeah.
yeah, even up until now, I experience it all the time because the first thing people say is, she doesn't look like someone that's lost anybody. She doesn't look like a one-man army. She doesn't look like anything she's been through. Yes, I appreciate that, but on some days, I don't want to be a hard girl. I just want to be a little baby.
Right?
So, yes.
Adeola, I just wanted to quickly bring Adeola into this. Adeola, we're just talking about, you know, that guilt of feeling, and, you know, Tofumi just said she experiences it as well, that guilt of feeling like, okay, you're moving on too quick. You know, what's the best way to handle that? You know, for when you feel like, I don't want people to think I didn't care or I didn't love. I'll tell you a funny story. So there was an issue with my mom, and she had to be away for a long time. And then she was not in a nice place. I'll put that out there. Not in a nice place at all. And I remember one day, my younger sister tells me she didn't want to sleep on the bed, you know, because she felt bad that my mom did not have such a nice place to sleep. So she wanted to sleep on the floor. She felt guilty sleeping on the bed. And I'm like, and in a way, I bought into that. I understand. So sometimes this guilt eats at you in ways you cannot even begin to express. So how do you deal with that now, Adeola?
Well, I think it's not the situation itself that is the challenge. It's the thought around it, right? So, like you just mentioned, there's a picture that your sister has put in her head, that and a thought, which is, my mom is not doing well, so I shouldn't as well. Now, your mom not doing well didn't mean that she had to do what she did, but because of the thought she had around it, the feelings came and action came and the results came. So I think it's the same thing with guilt, because most of it is personal. You know, you put that guilt upon yourself and you think other people are putting it on you. So I think the most important thing for me is that you check the thoughts that you put around any incident. So for example, my mother died. Okay, let's sit with it. My mother died. That's it. However, we then start to add, I could have been there for her. I could have done this for her. If I did this, she would have been there. And so you then start to have looping thoughts around it that cause you pain and then cause you suffering, because pain might be inevitable, but suffering is a choice. So what do you do with that, with the grief? Do you make it into a big thing and then start to suffer from it? Because that's what guilt does. Guilt makes you suffer. And most of the times you're putting that impression, that thought, and the feeling upon yourself. And I'm not sure how much time I had, but I would have shown you an example of a looping thought. But maybe, I don't know if you want for me to say something about it, but I personally think it's not the incident that is the problem, it's the thoughts and the continuous thoughts, the continuous thinking negative, that then makes it suffering, and that suffering can last forever.
I get that. Well, just like you rightly said, Adeola, we actually don't have so much time on this. I tried to just make this conversation pertaining to mental health as quick and brief as we can so people can get as much as they can from it without, us dragging it. Otherwise, I might just start to shed real tears on TV, and I don't think anybody wants to see that. So, Tofumi, thank you so much for sharing on the show today. Adeola, my ever so constant real G. Thank you so much for joining me on Arise 360. And to you watching, I do hope that in some way this has helped in some way.